All right, we're back with another edition of Sting's Greatest Rivals. If you're listening to this on Patreon early, thank you so much for being a Patreon subscriber. But if you're checking this out as part of Sting Week, I do greatly appreciate you checking out Sting Week right here on the Mike and JD Show YouTube channel. And today, Sting's Greatest Rivals, we are going to be talking about none other than Kurt Angle. Let me get to the Kurt Angle theme song now, because I actually took to Twitter and I took to the Voices of Wrestling Discord and said, hey guys, who is Sting's greatest rival in TNA? And it was a unanimous decision. He beat out everybody. He beat out Hogan. He beat out Abyss. He beat out AJ Styles. It was a Sting. So here's a little bit of Sting's theme. All right, that's a little bit of Kurt Angle's theme music. So there you go to get kick off this episode of Sting's Greatest Rivals. So I went to Twitter and I did a poll, and overwhelming. It was like, I didn't actually do a poll. I just said, hey, who's Sting's greatest rival? And I didn't put any names on there. And I one by one, people kept saying Kurt Angle, Kurt Angle, Kurt Angle in TNA. So I polled like TNA fans. And then I went into the TNA section of the Voices of Wrestling Discord, and we actually have a TNA historian, Garrett Kidney's in there. And he said, Kurt Angle would be number one, and then followed by him would be Hogan. And then number 3 would probably be Abyss. And so, okay, well, I'm only going to do one version of this TNA one, and it's going to be, we're going to talk about Kurt Angle, man. And so thank you for joining me, man. I really appreciate you, like, at last minute, like, watching a bunch of Sting versus Kurt Angle.
Really worth it. Matches were fun to watch. I actually hadn't watched them before. I've watched a lot of TNA Sting stuff. Most of what I've seen of Sting, obviously, from WCW, but it was cool to go back and watch those. And I got to say, man, what a banger of an entrance song for Kurt Angle in TNA. That wrestling entrance songs, their entrance themes, that first 3 seconds is so damn important. And his is so recognizable and iconic. It's just masterful work by whoever put that together.
Dale Oliver put that together, and is a ripoff of Lunatic Fringe.
Yeah.
Let me see. Who does Lunatic Fringe? Is it a Canadian band? Hold on. Lunatic Fringe. Let's see. Lunatic Fringe, Canadian. Red Rider. Yeah, Red Rider, 1981 track. I would play it, but then I get kicked off of YouTube.
Yeah.
So I can't play, but it's like, it's literally the same song. So
yeah.
They did a really good job with it. So you had not ever seen any of these Sting and Kurt Angle matches because you kind of missed a lot of Sting's run in TNA, right?
Yeah, actually, during most of that TNA run, I didn't have what people would call cable. We had NBC and CBS and sometimes Fox. So I didn't get to watch a lot of TNA when all this stuff was really, really hyped up and really good.
Yeah, because they were on Spike TV during a lot of those years, but they did. I'll be honest. I like the matches, and we're gonna get into. So I watched 4 matches today. You watched 3. We're gonna talk about them all, but they all had a common theme, and it was very much a Jeff Jarrett booking theme.
Yeah,
there was every single match, especially the 3 title matches, had a ref bump.
Yep.
They had interference. And they had a kick out after a ref bump with a tired referee coming. It was the same match all 3 times. They had the same formula, and that was pretty indicative of what TNA was doing at the time. It reminded me like kind of what we're watching right now with Roman. Like all his matches are basically like the same formula. There's always some type of interference, and like he always wins in the end, doesn't get his comeuppance, and the referees get hurt a lot. Like in these ones, even Jeff Jarrett was a referee, and he just kind of gets clotheslined, and he sells it for like 5 minutes, like he's an actual referee.
Yeah, I think it was the last one I watched, the one with Jeff Jarrett, where they make it a point that I think Kurt Angle wants no outside interference.
Yeah.
And Hulk Hogan comes in with a chair, and he's going to hit Sting, and Kurt Angle takes the chair away from him. and Hogan gets out of the ring, and then Kurt Angle hits Sting with a chair, and for some reason Hogan's mad about that. They close up of his face, and he's just snarling, brother. He's angry, brother. Kurt Angle just did exactly what you were going to do. Why are you mad? You got the outcome you wanted.
Well, welcome to TNA and the Hogan era of TNA. But that was a lot of what the main event scene was. It's like I said, it's very much what you're looking like, what it's looking like with the Bloodline, except for the most part, the Bloodline makes sense, you know?
Yeah.
Now, what doesn't make sense about the Bloodline is they consider him this like all-time greatest world champion, this revered champion, yet they never talk about the fact that he always cheats to win. Like they just totally bypass that part.
I mean, commentary does a better job of it, I'd say, the last year of pointing it out. Mostly Corey Graves, surprisingly. Corey Graves, when he's not got Vince McMahon in his ear and he's not just being a douche, very good wrestling commentator. But yeah, there's a lot of the same stuff. That first match I really want to talk about because I text you, Kurt Angle did his best to kill Sting in that match. He really did.
Yeah.
The 07, which pay-per-view was it?
It was Bound for Glory 07. Well, hold on. We'll talk. Let's intro it. So Bound for Glory 2007. I believe that was their very first singles match. Yes, it was. Okay, I have it up on Cage Match. So the match, it was October 14th, 2007. It was the main event. The match got 3 3/4 stars by Uncle Dave, 7.71 in the rating. Here's some of the comments. Birds123 says, one of my favorite main events in TNA Bound for Glory era. I could have done without the Nash interference. Overbooked TNA main event. Really cool main event. Good solid back and forth match. So mostly pretty positive on Cage Match. It's not like your typical, kick out of everything and do every move and stuff. But goddamn, Kurt Angle tried to do every move. He tried like you said, tried to murder Sting several times during this match.
This pay-per-view should have been hard to kill because that's what Sting was. Kurt Angle attempted a 450 splash, which I think at his peak athleticism he could pull off. Here he could not. This is it right here? Yeah,
this is it. I got it muted. It's little screen, so don't kick me off YouTube. But look.
Boom. Knees, feet right to the chest.
Yeah, double knee, 450 double knee right to the chest.
When I seen that, the first thing I had to do was go and check how old was Sting. He was like 48 there. That's not, and thousands of bumps deep at that point because he'd been wrestling since the 80s, I believe. With WCW, thousands of bumps deep, taking a full size Kurt Angle right to the chest right there.
Yeah. But I you know what? I really did like the match, and I thought that they did a good job of giving it like that big fight feel.
Yeah.
With the entrances, and like they had the separate video packages for each guy as they were making their entrance. I thought that was really cool. I honestly, I felt bad for Sting. Not only did Kurt Angle try to kill him, but Kurt Angle kept such a high pace. You could tell Sting was pretty exhausted, like halfway through. So like Angle had to like slow down.
Watching it, I gotta say it was cool to see some of the things just filming production wise back in 2007 that they're starting to use in NXT this last year. I think Jeremy Borash being the big connection there. Also, just another spot, and it sucked the spot happened, and I'm glad Sting was okay from it, but the visual afterwards was really badass when Kurt Angle went to swing the bat and Sting was supposed to catch it and just takes the bat right to the forehead. And
I wonder if I have that clip. Yeah, because Sting puts his hands up, and then the bat just slides right through his hands, and then just hits him right in the shoulder. And you could see that Sting was like, or Angle was like looking at him, like, what the F?
What do we do here? And then you don't really get the shot until Sting turns around a few moments later, and he's just covered in blood. They mentioned they try to say Kurt Angle's bleeding as well. I'm not sure if he actually was. He may have been, but I thought just on first glance, I thought it was just Sting's blood that got on Angle's forehead.
Yeah. No, I think it was gigged. Hold on. So I got I'm gonna pull up the clip right now. again, TNA, don't kick me off of YouTube. I would appreciate it, but let's see. Oh, look.
Look at him just no selling at 48 years old. No selling right there.
Sting's the greatest. Here it is again. Oh, just hits him right in the shoulder. That's so funny. And Kurt Angle's like, oh shit, I fucked up.
Yeah.
That's so funny. And then I think Kurt Angle actually covered that part on his podcast. Let's see. Oh yeah. Here we go. So hold on, I will. So I can do this. This is no problem. Here. Okay.
Good stuff. Martin Watthorn is up next. Martin, love you, buddy. A lot of these names I recognize because a lot of them are ad-free show folks, and they're
so
always
this is on
us.
the Kurt Angle show at YouTube.
Please,
So check it out. Please.
Kurt talk about his title-winning match versus Bobby Lashley from Impact at Wembley in London. So, Kurt, before we go on to his other questions, can you talk a little bit about that winning title match against Lashley?
Oh, hold on. I'm gonna fast forward to the Sting incident.
Yeah.
All right, let me see.
So the bat went right down between his hands.
For Glory 2007.
Okay,
the
here we
greatest
go.
of all
That's awesome.
time.
Thank you very much.
Martin's a good dude. Trey Edison is up next. He says, Kurt, I read a tweet regarding the Bound for Glory 2007 bat incident with Sting. What did you two say to each other in the ring? Also, backstage, what was said? Thank you very much.
Well, Sting was supposed to stop the bat. He didn't have his hands together. They were apart. So the bat
I like that
right
he just
down
fucking
between
swung it
his
anyway.
hands and hit him right on the head.
Yeah.
And his head exploded.
Yeah.
Blood was shooting everywhere. He had to get 20 stitches in his head. And I was like, fudge.
I'm sure you were.
I thought I knocked him out. I mean, his head, it had a loud clunk, like it was really loud. And the fans, even in the crowd, were like, holy crap. And I didn't know what to do. And Sting actually grabbed the bat, didn't break character, and hit me in the gut with it or whatever he did. And he finished it off. But we went backstage and Sting wasn't even mad. He's like, hey, it was my fault. I should have had my hands together. It wasn't your fault. And but I'm gonna have to get 20 stitches now. So he had to end up going to the EMTs and getting stitches. It was horrible, man.
That's so funny.
Just imagine, Kurt, it's your fault, Sting, that I hit you in the face with a baseball bat. Like,
yeah, and then Sting is such a pro that he just kind of knew that like that was definitely Sting's fault.
Yeah, what are you going to do to get mad at Kurt Angle at that point? Like, what are you going to do to Kurt Angle at that point? You know, take it on the chin and move on.
yeah. But Sting was such a pro. But yeah, I really did enjoy the match overall. Thankfully, I watched this one first, and so during the match, like they said in the comments, that Kevin Nash did interfere, and honestly, it was kind of like a boring, like lame interference. It just seemed like it was just. I know what story they were trying to tell us. Yeah, you can't. It's hard to look at it right now and say the interference sucked, but if you actually go back and you kind of look through the lens of 2007, the story they were telling at the time with Kevin Nash was not good. This was pre main event Mafia era, you know.
Nash wasn't really moving around very well at that point. I don't know, everything just seemed kind of slow when he came in, and even not knowing the story, you know, again, I wasn't watching TNA at the time. I don't know, it felt so predictable and just not necessary.
Yeah, it was the double swerve. Like, not only did Nash was like not supposed to be out there, but then he came out to help Sting and then turned on Sting. And it's like, guys, we knew, like, as soon as we saw Kevin, we knew that was happening. And then of course he just beats both their asses and then just ends up pinning Angle and getting the title.
Yeah, so I purposely watched, like I said, I wanted to watch the before stuff, everything that the pay-per-view had. And they did a segment with Sting and Nash backstage.
Yeah.
And I knew right then, it was like, oh, Nash is turning on Sting tonight. Like, I don't know what the story was before that, but I know where it's going.
Yeah. And if I remember correctly, it didn't really lead to like any like great like moment between Sting and Kevin Nash. Like, you know, that was like Kevin Nash was pretty old at that point, and he wasn't moving around too well. So you're not going to put Kevin Nash in the main event of a pay-per-view
Right.
against Sting and expect to draw a bunch of money. Like Kevin Nash was better as like an ancillary comedy character, that's what he did for most of his TNA run. Is he was just kind of like telling jokes with the X Division guys.
Yeah.
Like, have you ever seen like Paparazzi Productions with Kevin Nash and Alex Shelley? Like that's like the best stuff that he ever did there.
Yeah, and you know what's funny is like Nash wasn't moving around well at that time in 2007. And what was it, like 5-6 years later, WWE is like, hey, let's bring him in and put him in an angle with our hottest superstar at the time, because that's what people want.
Yeah. They put him in there with CM Punk.
The summer of Punk. The summer of Punk ended with a Kevin Nash jackhammer.
Yep. Oh man, gosh. And then we go to Destination X, 2009. What did you think of the Destination X match?
So that spot right there in particular really worried me, because Angle got some height on that, and I couldn't tell if he hit his head directly on concrete or on the foot of that barrier.
So this is him just exploding over, and then boom, Kurt Angle just hits his head directly on the floor.
Yeah, the whole match seemed, I don't know, lesser than the first one. It seemed slower pace, and it was pretty jarring because this was 2 years after the first one, and watching Angle get smaller each match, you could you could see it happening, through each match. I don't know if that bump there played any part of it. I don't know if Angle's talked about if he really may have got a little rattled there, or if the match went perfectly as planned. It just felt a little bit slower and, I don't know, lesser than the first one, and then had the same type of finish later on. So, I think, is that the one where Karen Angle came out?
Yeah. So by 2000, of course, they had a ref bump, and Karen Angle comes out, who Sting had a restraining order on against her, but naturally she broke the restraining order and comes out anyway. And there's a bunch of just shenanigans on top of shenanigans, and in order to keep I can't remember the name of the fact. This is the main event Mafia. Yeah, this is main event Mafia era. Yeah, this is main event Mafia.
Was the main event Mafia era the third one?
The third one, 2011, was Immortal. That's where Kurt Angle and Hulk Hogan were in a faction together called Immortal. Okay. In 2009, it was like Angle and Sting were both in the main event Mafia. Sting was a world champion, but Kurt was the leader of the main event Mafia, and so they had split, and that's why they had the empty arena match too. I can go to a little bit of the empty arena match, which you didn't watch, but the empty arena match essentially was the precursor to this match. And then basically by the end of it, they kind of like, Sting, who never really fully turned heel during the main event Mafia run. And that was because they were always, the whole gimmick of the main event Mafia was to get to Angle and Sting again. But here you could see on Garrett Kidney's Twitter. So empty arena match, or basically modern TNA.
I mean, it could also be modern AEW, depending on what venue they're in.
Depends. Yeah, if they run a building too big.
Yeah.
So they basically they did this empty arena match, and they couldn't come to a resolution here. Like Kevin Nash ends up like getting involved in it and like yelling at them, and then like they have this big brawl and it to be pulled apart, and then ultimately it leads them into Destination X. So, but the empty arena match I thought was pretty interesting. It doesn't get a rating by Dave. Let me go to. So when did they do the? I'm trying to. You know what? I don't. Oh, that's 2007. I got to go to 2009. Okay, so it's the. What's funny is on Cage Match, the empty arena match is 6.86. So it's actually higher rated than the Destination X match, was a 6.41, but Dave gave the Destination X 3.25 stars. So he had it just a little bit, like a half a star less than the Bound for Glory 2007 match.
Yeah, like I said, I think of the three that I watched, I felt the first one was the best. And a lot of it really was because of that bat spot and the way Sting sold/no sold it, the visual, and all bloodied. Going into the third one, I really liked the video build up for it. The Joker Sting stuff I thought was really interesting, and I wonder, a little off track here. I wonder if they'll bring that back for his final match. That's something I've seen a lot of fans asking for. I thought the character work that I've seen in the video package and just some stuff, through the years seeing online, the Joker Sting stuff was really interesting. Again, watching those 3 matches, it was really hard as a big Kurt Angle fan watching his body deteriorate with each match over the course of a 4-year span.
Well, he had the really bad problem with painkillers. So that's why they always the TNA years they call him Perk
Angle.
Perk Angle. But I was trying to find a GIF of the 2011 from Hardcore Justice. Hardcore Justice, dumbest name for a pay-per-view, by the way.
Yeah.
I think I've ever heard.
Because Great Balls of Fire exists.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But so yeah, I the Destination X match, I thought it was not as good at the 2009 Destination X match. I still thought it was pretty good, but again, it followed the same pattern of the Bound for Glory one.
Yeah.
A lot of gaga, a lot of bullshit, but that's kind of what they did back then. But I really enjoyed the Empty Arena match. So they're both on YouTube, guys. You guys can just go watch them on YouTube for free. You don't even need a subscription. And so they end up wrestling again. And they have a bunch of matches. They do a lot of TV matches. Kurt Angle, so that's why Kurt Angle and Sting was overwhelmingly the favorite feud of the TNA fan. But so their feud essentially culminates in 2011. I think they end up having another match after this. This was at Hardcore Justice 2011, and the match gets a rating of 5.83 from the Cage Match folks, but it gets a Wrestling Observer newsletter rating of 3.5.
How many people rated that match?
22.
22. Okay.
Yeah. Didn't get a lot of play this match.
Yeah.
Even though this was 2011, you're talking about TNA probably at its most popular period.
Yeah, I did think the third one was the lesser of the 3. Jeff Jarrett was the referee.
Yeah, and then
Mick Foley was the special enforcer. Mick Foley, who could barely get in the ring at that point. He did not look like he was moving well. And he was the special enforcer, all kinds of, ref bump, low blow to Mick Foley, I think. Mick Foley attempts to be the referee at one point and does a slow 3 count. I can't even remember who kicked out at that point. I think that was when Sting kicked out. The exact same formula, but to a lesser extent of each man at their physical abilities.
You know what? I think that this was Joker Sting, and it wasn't. No, we're mixing it up. Sorry, audience. Joe and I are screwing this up. It was the 2009 match was with Mick Foley as the enforcer and Jeff Jarrett.
Okay.
Yeah. So 2011 matches where Hulk Hogan interferes.
Yes. Okay.
And then Immortal gets involved, and so this ultimately leads to the Sting versus Hogan match at Bound for Glory 2011. And I'll pull it up to where people can see just a couple of seconds of it here. But yeah, so look, there's Brian Hebner as a referee.
Yeah.
Sting in his full Joker Sting gimmick. They have a full video on the TNA YouTube of just a compilation of just Joker Sting stuff, his entire run as Joker Sting. I think it's probably the most underrated shit that was going on. Unfortunately, TNA was just clouded in so much chaos at the time that I don't think he ever really got his just due as a performer during this.
Yeah, I thought that was a very good character. I think a lot of the positive stuff that still gets posted around about Sting from TNA was the Joker Sting character. The match quality, I can't speak for, all of his matches there. The Kurt Angle one's the one I've watched, but the character work was really top tier. And Sting, really a great character worker. There's that Hulk Hogan brother. There's that snarl. Yeah. He's so mad that Angle did what he was going to do.
Yeah, Kurt Angle did the thing that he wanted to do the entire time. Yeah.
I can't make sense of that. That's such a Hulk Hogan thing.
Yeah. So, but I think the reason why not only did they have just so many matches in TNA, and most of them were just televised matches.
Yeah.
But Kurt Angle and Sting were absolutely the top two stars in TNA history.
Yeah.
I know everybody wants to say AJ Styles and Samoa Joe, but those guys were never the tippy top guys. It would go back and forth between Sting and Kurt Angle. They were always the top two guys in that promotion.
And I feel like Kurt Angle's time, and he spent the majority of his wrestling career in TNA, but to really think about it, TNA signed Kurt Angle right after WWE let him go, and he was one of WWE's top stars at the time. He had a 5-6 year career in WWE, and he was one of their most protected wrestlers. He was coming off of, badass Kurt Angle, and yeah, they were going to annex him to ECW for a little bit and try to get his personal issues under control and not have him on the road as much. But when he was let go of WWE, he was one of their biggest wrestlers at the time.
Yeah. And we all like the inside wrestling fan, which was pretty prevalent back then, not as prevalent as we are today. But we all knew the issue as to why he was let go from WWE. He absolutely was fired, right?
Yeah.
But on television, it looked like Kurt Angle left WWE and chose TNA.
Yeah.
That's kind of the way it was played up on television, which was really smart.
Yeah, from TNA side, because WWE is never going to refute that. They're never going to come out and acknowledge that he's in TNA or say anything about it. So yeah, TNA, play that up. You just signed WWE's guy. You signed the Olympic gold medalist. You signed the WWE champion, the guy who beat Stone Cold. I believe he tapped out Stone Cold. Not very many people could say that. But that's the guy you went and signed. Yeah, he's your biggest star. AJ Styles may be more Mr. TNA. He was there from the start. Kurt Angle was your biggest star.
Yeah, it was. I think Kurt Angle was the biggest star in TNA history. I think he's the greatest wrestler in TNA history, in ring and just being the main event guy. I think Alexander is probably going to challenge that one day if he sticks around long enough. But he just when Kurt Angle did it, it was much bigger, so he's always going to get more glory. Josh Alexander might end up getting more star ratings, but honestly, Dave doesn't rate that many TNA matches, so you have to wait till Ospreay comes back for him to actually rate the match. But
I think he's rated 2 in the last couple of years, so
yeah,
both of them were Ospreay matches.
yeah. So, and then I think when Sting came over to TNA. Because he came over, he had done some matches in the Nashville days when they were at the Asylum, and then when they were brought over to Spike, Christian Cage had just signed with them in 2005, and that was considered a big deal. But Christian Cage was very much a mid-carder. Whenever he came over, WWE didn't really take him seriously, and so, but it was considered a big coup. But in 2006, when they made the big announcement that we have signed Sting to a full-time contract, that was when people were like, okay, we're taking notice of TNA. They actually might, kind of challenge, kind of take that WCW role. They were on Spike TV. They had just signed Christian Cage. They had the Dudley Boys or as Team 3D. And then in 2006, New Year's Eve, they announced the big signing of Sting. And then Sting immediately challenges Jeff Jarrett for the World Heavyweight Championship. It's oh my gosh, look, we're kind of getting somewhere. And then later that year in 2006, Angle leaves WWE and he comes over here and it's okay, now these guys are in business. Now these guys, they actually might, make a run at a lot of us fans were kind of hoping, because we were just kind of soured on the Triple H era of WWE at the time, where he just kept winning the world title and would never let go of his grip at the top of the promotion. We were all kind of sick of him. And John Cena was coming of age at that point. He was starting to take over and we were sick of him too. And so here you have this other alternative that's becoming this viable thing. And it was because if they didn't have Kurt Angle and Sting at the top of the card, I don't think anybody would have given him a chance.
Yeah, and at that point, Sting hadn't wrestled on TV in 5 years, on national TV. He ended his run in WCW in 2001. Him and Flair were the last match on Nitro, I believe.
Yep.
And he didn't wrestle on TV until TNA. I remember the signing being a big deal. I remember wanting to watch TNA because I again was a big Sting fan. You know, a lot of what I knew of Sting at that time was just stealing tapes from your house and watching old WCW.
Yeah.
But I was one of the guys. You know, Sting was very much like the Undertaker character. You know, very similar style. Undertaker always being my favorite wrestler. I always gravitated towards wanting to learn more about Sting. I just never had the access to watch TNA. I remember there being rumblings in like 2005 that maybe Sting would come back for the Undertaker match, and then he chose TNA. And the big thing with Sting is every time his contract come up, fans would always talk about is it time for him to come to WWE for the Undertaker match to finally happen? And he always chose TNA. He was a TNA guy at that point.
Yeah, well, he really liked the TNA schedule,
Yeah.
and honestly, like in TNA, like Dixie Carter and Jeff Jarrett, like revered him. Like they absolutely thought he was like one of these all-time great legends. When he went up to WWE, they didn't like. He came out and he was like a big deal, but like Vince McMahon's like, dude, I've had Hulk Hogan, I've had every big star, and like who like you're not that big to me. So and honestly, they didn't really do anything with him when he ended his run in 2015. They did the Triple H match, and because they had to get the Attitude Era to be able to get that victory. And then later that year, they put him up against Seth Rollins, and then Rollins has a full match before he wrestles Sting, and then he ends up beating Sting right after that. And I was like, they never really gave him a ton of dignity.
Yeah. So yes, they did, because they had him tap out Seth Rollins on Monday Night Raw. That's why he got the title match in the first place. Right. He did beat the WWE champion clean.
They got a visual tap out.
They had Sting beat their young WWE champion clean in the middle of the ring on Monday Night Raw. So
and then Seth Rollins has a full match with who was it? John Cena?
Yes, John Cena.
Yeah, it was John Cena. So he had a full match. And then he ends up wrestling Sting right after that.
I'm not saying it was perfect. That part of it was dumb. But like,
what the perfect way to use, you know who's used Sting the best? Honestly, old Sting. It's been AEW.
Yeah,
AEW
has been the picture perfect example of how you should book a guy of Sting's age who wants to extend their career. They've used him perfectly. He's been used perfect. I always have wondered if more would have happened with WWE had Sting not got hurt. I'm completely fine with WWE saying, look, you had the injury, we're not going to risk it, and we're just going to pay you to be in video games for however long you want to be in our video games. But I did like the Rollins match. I don't care that he lost to Triple H. You know why? I fucking had fun watching that match. That match was fun.
I know, but it was just another. I did. No, I know. Trust me, I did. Yeah. No, I did. I did have fun. Here's what I didn't like about it. I thought Sting should have won. Because Triple H only wrestles once a year, and he loses to everybody, but he wasn't about to lose to Sting. And this was a whole thing. It was a vanity thing to make sure that everybody knows that the Attitude Era was better than the WCW era. They brought the NWO out to beat him. Now here's where I really had a problem with that match. Here was another big issue. But even though I did have fun and I enjoyed the match, I was there live. So like I have like that was the only time I've ever seen Sting live. So because I never made it to a WCW or a TNA show. Triple H cheats with a sledgehammer to beat Sting, and then afterwards they just shake hands and say, "Okay, now wrestling's fake again. We can be friends again."
Yeah.
You know, if Triple H beats him by cheating with a sledgehammer, and then now we have to go to like Hell in a Cell. I'm okay, I'm on board with that. But no, it was just like, no, we just want to get Triple H the win. We're gonna make Sting look like a superhuman. We're gonna have to beat him with a sledgehammer. But then afterwards, we're gonna totally shit on the whole thing that we just did and have them shake hands.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they knew, they being WWE and Sting, if they knew he would do anything for them after that.
Yeah,
I think they really, there's two thought processes going into that match. They knew at that time that Triple H was going to main event WrestleMania 32. The plan was Triple H versus Seth Rollins at that point. And Triple H coming off of a loss at WrestleMania 30, they felt, which again, not entirely true, nobody would have cared, but they felt Triple H needed a win at WrestleMania before main eventing WrestleMania 32. And they didn't know if they would do anything with Sting after that. Sting didn't know if he would wrestle again. I guess why not shake hands, let that be a big, nice send off for Sting, and then they decide a couple months later, yeah, let's bring him right back into the story. But
No, it's because at the
aside
time WWE didn't really map things out very well. Clearly,
yeah,
they were that. I mean, it was like Raw was in full blown chaos at all times. Or the only thing
Yeah.
that really was booked very well at those days was NXT.
yeah, that was early. That was actually, that weekend was the first NXT show that went on the road.
Yeah,
the
and I
San
was there
Jose
for
show.
that.
Yeah,
I was
that's
there.
when Hideo Itami, Kenta used the GTS for the first time in NXT.
Yeah.
Big
Yep.
moment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
huge
But-
moment. But yeah, so Kurt Angle and Sting. Kurt Angle is absolutely one of Sting's greatest rivals. That was probably the top feud, in probably the top rivalry in all of TNA. Actually, Samoa Joe and Kurt Angle would probably be the best rivalry in
Yeah.
TNA. But right behind them, a little bit lower on the list would be Sting versus Kurt Angle. Good stuff, Joe. I'm glad you got to watch a little bit of TNA, so you can kind of see what Jeff Jarrett and Vince Russo booked main event looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah, total chaos. And then you get to see the influences that it's on the current TNA or the current AEW and WWE product.
Yeah, I mean, you can really see, especially in NXT, you can see a lot of the Jeremy Borash influence on what the current NXT product, and you're even starting to see it leak over to Raw and SmackDown now.
Yeah.
I think the people in charge, Borash has a little bit more of their ear than he did maybe a year ago. And I think he's going to be a very important figure for them going forward. So it was cool to see some of that stuff from, basically 17, 15 years ago be used and kind of what it's being implemented into now. Kurt Angle, man, just one of the greatest of all time. Even seeing him at that stage in his career where he was physically, mentally, just health-wise, the guy could still do everything. It sucks that so many people miss such a large chunk of his career, and it really sucks that for a lot of people, the last images they'll have of Kurt Angle wrestling is to fucking Baron Corbin.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of great stuff he did in TNA, and I hope more people go out and watch it.
Yeah, me too, man. Well, I really appreciate you joining me on this edition of Sting's Greatest Rivals as part of Sting Week. Right here on Patreon, right here on the Mike and JD Show YouTube channel. JD and I got one more coming. It's Sting versus the NWO. That's going to be the big finale. Sting's probably biggest box office feud that he ever had. So Sting versus the NWO coming soon to a Patreon near you, and then eventually on YouTube. So I really appreciate you guys being here with me this week. And until next time, mahalo.